I'm Amanda Knox, and you're listening to Hard Knocks. Welcome to another Ask Amanda Anything, where you can ask me anything. Really, just send in your questions to amandaknox.com. We give priority to subscribers. So subscribe at where, my love?
At amandaknox.substack.com.
And Chris will read off your questions.
Yes, and, perhaps add a little spin of my own, because my goal here is to playfully prod, poke, and jab Amanda to draw out her best answers. And as you all know, poking and prodding is the best way to sustain a relationship. So, look at that face. All right, we're going to start with a fun question from someone who's been watching The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox on Hulu. How did you choose who would portray you?
You mean, how did I get lucky enough to get Grace Van Patten, who's frickin' amazing? I mean, it was a whole process of looking at actresses who fit the description, were within an age range, were Hollywood requires a lot of juggling and maneuvering, but ultimately what it was is I was able to take a look at what she's done in the past. I was really impressed with her versatility, and I loved her ability to be both very serious but also very playful, and she just showed up. Like, I did not know ahead of time just how much of an incredible work ethic she has and how incredibly, intuitive and smart and caring she is. So I think I got lucky in a big way. But yeah, I took a look at what her resume and her work and let that speak for itself.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that. We love you, Grace. She's amazing.
We love you, Grace. You're amazing.
Yeah. Someone asks, are you still fluent in Italian?
Sì, dopo 4 anni dovrei essere ancora fluente in italiano, e se vuoi io posso anche parlare tutto questo tempo in italiano, anche se ci sono certe parole che mi scappano ogni tanto. Non è che ho una memoria perfetta, però anzi, io ricordo tutte le parole dopo un bicchiere o 2 di vino, quindi sempre c'è spazio di migliorare, però sì, sono ancora fluente in italiano.
Yeah, so she's saying her Italian gets better after a glass or 2 of wine, but, she's very fluent. The one thing I will note is that there's a certain level of speech that involves hand gestures in Italian, and there's also a kind of like attitude that's very Italian in your inflections, even like the filler words that Americans use versus Italians. Like, you just started speaking in Italian there, but in between 2 sentences you said and when you're really in the Italian zone, you don't say you say eh. You do this you make this different noise as your filler word. Do you know what I'm talking about?
È giusto, ma anche dico spesso, o insomma.
Yeah.
Sì.
So anyway.
C'è una mentalità diversissima, guarda, e poi a questo punto io penso che io sono un po' italiana, un po' americana.
We don't want to bore people who don't understand Italian here, okay?
I think they are just being lulled by the dulcet tones of my Italian.
Okay, maybe here's a fun thing. Say something really disturbing and awful in a really lovely, mellifluous Italian way.
I am not falling in that trap, you horrible person. Are you kidding me? Do you work for the tabloids? Like, what is wrong with you?
Just, like, talk about the horrors of war or something. Okay, fine.
Next question.
All right. I was trying to bring to life this thing you're talking about, that anything sounds good in Italian. Okay.
You're just talking about how like everyone sounds mean when they're German or angry when they're German and like in love when they're Italian, but I'm not falling for it,
Yeah.
Robinson.
All right. Well, do you want to say something loving in German that make it sound, guttural?
I mean, ich liebe dich.
Yeah, you're right. That does sound. But say it like a Klingon.
Ich liebe dich.
Yeah. There we go. All right. Itch scratched. All right. Moving on. We have two questions related to Professor Saul Kassin.
I was just writing an email to him earlier today.
Yeah. So this is from Susan, who says, I didn't know that Dr. Kassin had reached out to you. I know you had him on the podcast. Do you still keep in touch? And Delaney asks, my partner had learned about you a week ago from a Morbid podcast episode, and I suggested your documentary because it is a real case of what happens with a false confession. I found that it would help me focus on my academic assignment. Unintentionally, I typed false confessions into my Spotify search engine, and your series on false confessions came up. And it felt like such a blessing because I was able to listen to it while at the gym. When I heard that Saul Kassin was a speaker on the series, I nearly fell off the elliptical because I am reviewing 2 of his articles. I feel like a small fish in a large pond with the limited resources of forensic psychologists and the desire to get into the field to do work that you and Saul Kassin have done so far. Thank you for being the first inspiration for me on my academic path. I think as a reminder, maybe you can mention how Saul Kassin plays into the latest episode of The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox.
Yeah, so all great questions. The way that I met Saul is actually depicted in the show. He originally reached out through family and friends and eventually through writing to me in prison because he became aware of my case as being one that was involving a false confession. I, very famously in court was describing how I was coerced by the police into implicating myself and others in Meredith's crime, or, in the crime against Meredith. And I, was trying to make the case in court that like I was confused and I was scared and I was led to believe things by the police because they lied to me, but no one believed me. And I remain convicted of, intentional criminal slander against an innocent person. And I didn't really understand what had happened to me. And it was really hard on me. Like, I just did not understand what happened to me during my interrogation. And I had no context for understanding, no context for knowing if this was something that happened to other people. And it wasn't until Professor Saul Kassin reached out and shared his research with me that I came to understand what was really going on.
Can you walk us back a little bit? Like, you don't know who Saul Kassin is. And actually, I don't think he shared his research with you right away. Can you walk us through what that was like?
Sure. So when he reached out, he told me that he was a professor and a researcher on police interrogations. And he asked me to recount to him, before he told me really anything, just everything that I could possibly remember, every little detail about how I was questioned. As like anything, any possible, just all the interactions. Was the door open? Was the door closed? What was the light like? What was the lighting in the room? Was there a window? Like all of these like very minute details about how the entire thing played out. And I wrote him a very long letter writing him, again, all of these details as much as I possibly could remember. And after he received my account, he sent me his paper, The Psychology of False Confessions, Does Innocence Put Innocence at Risk? So that paper spells out how the way, like the method that police use to interrogate people and how it gaslights and manipulates and coerces innocent people into implicating themselves or making false statements. And it also delineated these different kinds of false confessions, 3 different kinds. One of them is called voluntary, and it has nothing to do with police interrogations. These are when like just random people just like call up the police and say, I committed this crime.
Attention seekers or mentally ill people.
Attention seekers or mentally ill people who convince themselves or whatever, like will reach out on their own behalf to confess to crimes that they had nothing to do with. Then there are the 2 that are related to police interrogation techniques, one of which is called a
coerced compliant.
What is that? Yeah, coerced compliant is the term, and that's when an innocent person knows that they're falsely confessing, right? They're intentionally falsely confessing because they are just so bullied and beaten down and exhausted that they just will want to tell the police what the police very clearly, obviously want to hear so that the interrogation will just stop.
They'll do
just,
anything
like, so
to end the
overwhelmed.
pressure. And often they think that, oh, well, when the evidence comes in later, it's going to prove I'm innocent anyway. So who cares if I say this now? Because, the DNA, the police have lied to them that they're collecting DNA, say. And they're like, well, the DNA is going to show it's not me. So I'll just say whatever I have to say. And then, of course, there never was DNA. The only evidence they now have is the confession. And that person ends up going to prison. All too common story.
Right. And then the final one is called an internalized false confession. And that is when the police gaslight and lie to a person enough that they start believing that what the police are telling them must be true, even though they have no memory of it, say. And very often in that case, the police suggest to the person that they've blacked out, that their real memories have been repressed, and then they encourage them to do this process of trying to to reveal repressed memories. And that plays into a lot of psychology that other people have looked into, like Professor Elizabeth Loftus, who is an expert in false recovered memories. And so, his research shed incredible light on my experience of what happened to me and was a huge relief to me. Because, the whole world was blaming me and calling me a liar and and I didn't know how to respond. Like I didn't, all I could say is what had happened to me, and no one believed me. And I, in many ways even internalized a lot of that blame and blamed myself and thought that I was just a coward or I was broken. And he really revealed to me that I was none of those things. And in fact, this whole system of interrogation was designed to break me. And so, yeah. And then we stayed in touch for years. And since then, I've, gone to New York and visited him. I've visited his class. I've,
Yeah, we visit his class about once a year for his grad students at John Jay College.
I love to visit his class.
You did a big event with him at the
close.
American Psychology and Law Society in front of a couple thousand people.
Chat.
Yeah.
Yep. And so he's where I'm also contributing to a new book that he is working on. So yeah, we are very close and we stay in close contact. And like I said, I was just sending an email to him this morning. Resilience isn't free. I mean, technically it is, but ad-free resilience? That's a few bucks a month. Subscribe at amandaknox.substack.com for ad-free episodes of Hard Knocks, plus bonus episodes and essays that help you turn adversity into insight and navigate the chaos of life with a little more clarity. Because sometimes all you need is a little insight and someone who's already face-planted in the mud to talk you through it.
Yeah, and Saul, if you don't know him, he's really a champion in the innocence movement and in the forensic psychology world. Just an incredibly smart and empathetic guy who's also come up with really clever experimental designs to try and show in the lab the kinds of things that happen psychologically to someone when they go through a coercive interrogation. We highly recommend his book, Duped, if you haven't read it, if you want a deep dive on false confessions. And of course, you can go back to this series we did on labyrinths called False Confessions, which is there in the Hard Knocks feed. And you can also, I think, find a link to it on amandaknox.com.
How many episodes is that? I forget.
I think it was like 6 episodes, maybe.
6 episodes, yeah. Okay.
Anything else on Saul? Yeah, he's just awesome. Read Duped, seriously. It'll blow your mind.
Read Duped.
Yeah.
His research is incredible.
Okay. Another question related to The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox on Hulu. Did you get to meet Roberta Mattei? This is the actress who plays Valentina Greco, the head of homicide in the show. And if you haven't watched the show yet, she has sort of long dark hair, dark eyeliner, and a perpetual sort of scowl. She's very kind of Cruella de Vil a little bit, right?
Well, we're not trying to portray her as Cruella de Vil. She is, she's a hard-nosed, no-nonsense kind of person who is, who's investigating a really traumatic and traumatizing case. She is not above it impacting her.
So here, let me give you the full question.
Okay.
Did you get to meet Roberta Mattei in real life? And is she a nice person who was just able to convincingly be styled and play a fairy tale witch on TV?
Okay. Again, she's not supposed to be a fairy tale witch. She is supposed to represent this person who existed in real life, who was astringent. But yes, I have been able to meet Roberta Mattei, and she is lovely. And she's kind of the opposite of the character that she plays. She's like a yoga instructor and peace and love kind of lady. She's like so sweet. She gave me a little statue of Ganesh.
That's where that came from.
Yeah, that's from Roberta. And yeah, so she's lovely. And she was super funny when I first met her. She was in character on set in a courtroom scene, and then she caught sight of me off, I was obviously not in frame, and she made eye contact at me and then did the finger pointing thing, I'm watching you. And it was just so funny. So yeah, she's great. She has a wonderful sense of humor. She's a really sweet person, a great actress. She disappears into the role, as they say.
Oh, she totally does. There are a few other characters like the Vice Comandante, who I've seen a few comments come in of people saying I wanted to get out of my chair and slap the TV. And again, another nice actor who does a wonderful job portraying a character who is treating an innocent girl in a very nasty way. But I want to just ask you about, this assumption that I think some people have that, in real life, people aren't like that. One of the missions we had with this show was to dimensionalize everybody and create real human beings out of them, right? And yet, Argiro and, the Vice Comandante and the head of homicide, played by Roberta Mattei, both come off to people as despicable. And I don't think it's because we're misrepresenting who those people were in real life. And so I guess my question for you is, you're able to go sit down with your prosecutor and spend a lot of time humanizing him in real life and in the show. Were these various police figures and the prison warden figure who interacted with you somehow different? Or was your window on them more limited to a kind of nastiness?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is that the Vice Comandante and the head of homicide were people that I encountered in a very limited capacity. I only ever encountered the Vice Comandante when I was his prisoner, right? And in a high-profile case. So what he's like outside of the prison space, I don't know. And our show doesn't show that because I don't have any insight into that. Like, the show is from my perspective. We only see him when I see him, or from when we know. Like, there are examples of when we see him overhearing what I'm saying to my mom during my visitations. But we know that to be the case because they were recording it, and he was delivering those recordings to the prosecution. So we know that from the evidence. But I don't have any insight into his personal character beyond what I experienced, and that's what we depict in the show. The same thing there are things that we know about the person Valentina Greco is based upon that didn't make into the show, that don't
that
help
aren't
make
flattering.
her seem that are further unflattering things that we have not depicted in the show, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
I mean, there's things with the Vice Comandante that, I think the show actually whitewashes a little bit how bad it was. For example, like when you were first strip searched and photographed naked when they brought you into the prison. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but wasn't he just like right there watching that?
So no, actually, the thing that we depicted in the show is actually two different things happening. So I wasn't stripped and photographed at the prison. I was stripped and photographed at the police office. And so there was a male photographer, there was a male medical person there, and there were female police officers. And so I was in a room full of people. None of them were Argiro, none of them were the Vice Comandante. So no, like the Vice Comandante was never there when I was getting strip searched. However, he absolutely was there when I was alone in a room with him. And he absolutely was there when I was being told that I had HIV, and he was the one who escorted me back to my cell and encouraged me to think about all of my sex partners.
Oof. Okay. Well, I think in the show it's kindly presented as a female officer who's doing the inspecting and photographing. When I got to the prison, I also had to strip naked and do that whole song and dance with a female officer. So that also did happen. Okay, moving on. We have a question. This is from Lisa. During your own incarceration, was there anything you received, saw, or experienced from the public that stayed with you and gave you strength? I would be deeply grateful for any advice, feedback, or guidance you can give.
From the public? I mean, my access to the outside world was extremely limited.
Yeah, but you got lots of mail.
Well, I'm getting there, boo. Let me get there, okay? Stop anticipating what I'm about to say. I only had a limited number of Italian, like, TV channels that I had access to, and I had a limited number of, like, publications in Italian that I had access to. So in terms of just, like, public, any kind of media that was outside of Italy, I did not have access to. Any kind of, all of that stuff was not available to me. However, I did get a lot of mail. And the mail was of all kinds of sorts. I got death threat mail. I got people who wanted me to send, like, people who wanted to, like, be sex pen pals with me. They wanted to just send sexy things.
Send nudes.
And well, it's not really, because we don't have nudes to send each other, but they wanted to, like,
verbal nudes.
Write. Yeah, it was like sexting, but with mail, basically. That's what they wanted to do.
Marriage proposals.
Marriage proposals. But I also did receive letters from people who were just concerned, and they were following the case. And some of those were sent to my family, and then my family gathered them and sent them in a packet to me. Sometimes they just were letters that were written to me. And that was really nice. I mean, it was nice when people would reach out and say, hey, I know it seems like the world is against you, but just so you know, I'm a little person in nowhere town, Wisconsin, who believes you and is wishing the best for you and your family. Like that was really nice. And that person didn't have to do that. But it was nice to make me feel a little less alone. So, yeah.
I mean, what about physical things that were sent? I know one person gave you like a CD full of Irish rebel songs, for instance.
Yeah, I did get occasional things that I was allowed to have. A lot of times people would send me things that I was not allowed to have, like books. Like you couldn't send me a book. It had to, like, that had to go through a different process to get in, and especially if it was a hardcover, like they would immediately take that away.
What's the thinking there, that you would clock someone on the head with a book?
No, I think because it's easy to hide drugs in
the book spine
books.
somehow?
Yeah, in book spine somehow. So like they just, as a rule, do not allow hardcover books. And I think one time somebody sent me a bra that they wanted me to sign and send back to them,
okay,
which I did not do. Yeah, anything else weird?
What about what was happening back in Seattle with, the Friends of Amanda? And did you get word about any of this grassroots, support movement while you were in prison?
Yeah. Again, when I say that there were people who sent messages through my family, in large part, that was that community. They would, send emails to my family to send on to me. And so my family would email me like a packet of nice messages from people who said that they were following the case and introducing themselves. And that was really nice. Yeah. Oh, one thing that I loved that someone sent me that was just so thoughtful was anyone who's familiar with Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. It's a fan fiction written by Eliza Yudkowsky that was invented to teach people like rational thinking processes, but also was just such a hardcore Harry Potter nerd thing. And so somebody just like printed out every chapter that Eliza Yudkowsky would write, and then he would just send it to me as it was being written. And then apparently he told Eliza Yudkowsky that I was reading the whole thing. And so Eliza Yudkowsky wrote me into one of the chapters. Not as a character, as like Harry mentions me to someone in a chapter. And so that was pretty exciting. I was immortalized in Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. Come on.
I mean, I imagine when this absurd, illogical farce is taking over your life, that having the backing of the rationalist community must feel
I didn't know
good,
what the
right?
rationalist community was. Like, I just didn't know who that was. I didn't know who Eliza Yudkowsky was. All I knew was I was enjoying this Harry Potter fan fiction, and it was great. So,
all right. Well, final question here. It's a heavy one. Forewarning.
Oh no!
And I'm going to need you to think very carefully about this.
This isn't therapy, but it might help you live better. On Hard Knocks, we ask, how do you move forward when life sideswipes you? How do you find meaning in the mess? If you're into those kinds of questions and want ad-free episodes, extra content, and essays to dig deeper, subscribe at amandaknox.substack.com. I can't promise I'll fix your life, but I can make you feel better about how weird it already is.
Your answer can piss off a lot of people or make a lot of friends, probably both.
Oh,
Han
okay, great.
Solo or Indiana Jones?
I mean, one's a criminal and the other's a criminal.
He's not a criminal.
I mean, it depends on who you're asking. He's just stealing artifacts from
It
ancient
belongs
cultures.
in a museum.
Does it belong in a museum?
Does it belong to the natives? Yeah.
Does it belong in the natives museum as opposed to his little
The
like
British
hoity-toity
museum, yeah, the American,
British
yeah.
museum? I don't know. It doesn't age well.
But what about Han Solo? He's just operating under an oppressive, evil empire. He's only smuggling.
But he's smuggling not out of any sense of like idealism. He's just self-interested.
He's a scoundrel. Yeah.
At least, yeah, he's a scoundrel. I suppose. I mean, if you wanted to look good on paper, you'd go with Indiana Jones, right? Like he's a professor, although he's, I guess a lot of his students are hitting on him and he's not necessarily responding. So I kind of like that. I like that, actually. It's the opposite take of the professor who's just taking advantage of his students. So yeah, okay. All right, I'm warming to Indiana.
But Han Solo's a war hero.
Han Solo does come around and become a war hero.
Instrumental in the war effort against the Empire.
Yeah, but I don't know if I want to date a soldier,
Well, it's not. The question wasn't who are you dating.
I mean, you were asking.
Did you turn it into that in your head?
Yes.
This is not fuck, marry, kill.
Okay, well, what does it mean then, Han Solo or Indiana Jones? I'm supposed to say both at that point.
You're not on the
then.
Bachelorette, okay?
If I had to choose between these two bachelors,
you're like, it's a throuple, duh.
Yeah. You know what? I'll take a throuple.
No, I mean, like, who's cooler? This is a classic boy question.
This is a boy. Okay, you asked a girl a boy question, and I responded in a girl way.
Version of that,
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know. I love that Han Solo's friends with Chewbacca. I think that they have a great dynamic. Indiana Jones tends to be more solo vibes.
Well, he does tend to have accomplices who are. He's got Short Round at one point, and he's got his bumbling, bumbling professor guy who's easily. He's
got a weird daddy complex thing going on.
They both have similar sort of demeanors toward women, which we don't need to get into necessarily.
I will say
they both shoot first.
Again, responding to. This as a woman, like when he says, I know. God, what a devastatingly debonair way to answer that, like to respond to her. And a little bit fuck him, but a little bit like,
well, it's like the ultimate neg, right?
It's the ultimate neg. I know. Freeze. Like the last thing he's going to ever say to her. He doesn't know if he's waking up ever. I know. What the? Okay, Indiana Jones. Just for that, Han Solo gets downgraded.
Wait, really? Come on, it's the most baller thing he ever did, though.
No. But if he really loves this woman, and this might be the last thing that he ever says to her, I know is insufficient. If you said that to me, if you were on your way out and I was like, I love you, so yeah. Out.
Let's see, what was their relationship at this point, though?
I mean, they were flirting / fighting all the time. She's finally said to him, I love you. They weren't an item yet
at this point, were they? Not really.
Leia has just like professed her love for him. And his response is, I know.
Okay, well.
He said that for the men. He did not say that for the women.
Just one counter here, like when someone drops an L-bomb on you, it's a big deal. And to figure out, normally it's like, oh my God, I got to respond to this. You've put me on the spot now of having to respond immediately to are we both at the L-bomb place with each other? And like, is it a little fucked up of Leia to drop an L-bomb in him in that moment and give him 2 seconds to respond?
he's about to probably die. Like, they had said they never tested this on a human before.
I mean, what if he had said,
he
I like
probably
you
was
too.
going to die.
I care about you.
That would have been worse. Anyway, just letting
All
you
right.
know, Indiana for the win. Just for that.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your questions, both serious and silly. And again, if you want to submit questions for the next Ask Amanda Anything, you can go to amandaknox.substack.com. Subscribers to the Substack will get priority. You can also send questions through amandaknox.com or find Amanda on Twitter, Bluesky, Instagram, on the street, on the ferry. You know. Actually,
Like
that'd
you
be
do.
cool if someone just pulled you aside at the grocery store and was like, you know.
Would that be cool?
If it was a good question,
know.
better make sure it's
Maybe
a
if it
great
was a
question.
good yeah, if you're going to stop me in the middle of my grocery shopping, make sure it's a very good question.